Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome, my dear friends. Now I would like to invite today's eminent resource person, Dr.P.Manjula Madam Garu, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, RBVRR Women's College, Autonomous, Hyderabad. So, Madam will going to explain today's continuation class. So, yesterday's continuation class. So, Madam yesterday has clearly explained about food chain, food web, and ecological pyramids. Who given Charles Elton has given different types of the ecological pyramids, and the continuation topic Madam will going to discuss by today itself. Madam, please welcome and start your class.
Thank you, sir. So today's topic is ecological adaptations. Sir, is it visible screen?
Yes, yes, a screen is visible. Please, if possible, please click on slide. Better it is visible, very clear.
Good afternoon, madam.
Okay.
Ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my dear students. So today's topic is ecological adaptations. So this is also important. So ecological, so adaptations means to adjust to the particular environment. So some changes in morphological or physical changes to survive in the particular environment. So it is called as the adaptation. So adaptation is in an organism or in the community or generally for the change in the entire environment. So to survive in a particular environment, so changes in the some modifications which are taking place in the organism, so these are called as the adaptations. So the organisms which adapt to the changes in the surrounding atmosphere because of the basic property of the protoplasm known as the adaptability. So adaptability which helps in the organism to maintain the process of evolution. So if we cannot adjust to that particular environment, we cannot survive. So for this purpose, so some changes, some modifications in the organisms will take place. Otherwise, the organisms will not survive. So the ecological adaptations are the responses which are shown by the plants to the environmental conditions and also to adjustments for the as per the environmental changes. So the changes in the character, so which enable the organisms to withstand the changes in the surrounding environment and make sure of these changes for the maximum benefit are known as the adaptations. So adjustments to the particular environment to survive in particular environment. So these are called as the adaptations. Adaptations which are induced by water factors or availability of water in the environment. Again, based on the availability of the water in the environments, so the plants are the organisms, generally they are classified into three. That is xeric. Xeric means dry habitats, where the water availability is very low. Hydric means so there is a availability of water is there. And mesic means so minimum balance of dry and wet conditions. So these terms are used for the environmental conditions which are responsible for the respective adaptations. So here these here the plants are classified into here warming classified the plants into three types based on availability of the water or requirement of the water. Based on the availability of water, here warming classified three types, that is hydrophytes. That is hydrophytes means the plants growing in the abundant water, that is in maximum water supply and near the water. So the plants which are growing near the water bodies are in the water, abundant water, so they are called as the hydrophytes. So warming he classified the plants into three types: hydrophytes, xerophytes and mesophytes. So hydrophytes means the plants which are growing near the water bodies are in the water bodies, so they are called as the hydrophytes. Xerophytes means the plants growing in a dry or arid region, so which show shortage of water in the soil. That is here the minimum supply of water is there. So here dry habitats, the plants which are growing in dry habitats, they are called as the xerophytes. And the plants growing in dry, next one, the plants growing in habitat with neither less or nor more water, it is available. It is called as the mesophyte. That is, here the moderate water supply is required. So it is called as the mesophytes. So this point is important. So who classified these hydrophytes, xerophytes and mesophytes means warming. Okay, on the basis of availability of water. So next one is, so here ecological adaptations of, so here mainly these two ecological adaptations of hydrophytes and xerophytes are important. So ecological adaptations of hydrophytes. So the plants are either growing on land or in water. So the land plants get essential water from the soil, but the aquatic plants are growing within the or near the water bodies. So they are called as the hydrophytes. So on the basis of availability of water, the adaptations are of three types, that is xeric, hydric and mesic. So first one, hydric adaptations. So water availability is far more than the requirement of the plants. So here the more amount of water is present than the requirement. So generally plants require some amount of water for their physiological processes, but here the more than the requirement of the plants. So here the water availability is more. So these are called as the hydrophytes. So there is no need of mechanical strengthening as plants are supported by water all around them. So here the plants which are growing in the water near the water bodies. So here generally here there is no need for mechanical strength as plants are supported by water all around them. So aquatic plants can only grow partially or completely in water or in the soil. So that is permanently saturated with the water. So the habitat of aquatic plants is either freshwater or marine. So underwater, leaves and stems are flexible to move with water currents. So the plants which are growing in the water, so here the leaves and stems, so they are adapted to this environment, this hydrophytic environment, hydric conditions. So the leaves and stems are flexible to move with the water currents. So generally, if the more water currents are there, so the leaves or stems may be break down, but here they can adapt. So here the stems and leaves are very flexible to move with the water currents. So as plants are growing in hydric condition, these are known as the hydrophytes. Hydro means water and phytes mean plants. So there are three types of hydrophytes. So again here hydrophytes are classified into three types. So based on their modifications, again based on the presence of roots or how they are present in the water. So as the plants are growing in hydric conditions, so they are called as the hydrophytes. And again here there are three types. So first one is the submerged hydrophytes. Submerged hydrophytes means the plants are growing under the water surface. So they are called as a submerged. They are present inside the water. So they are called as a submerged hydrophytes. So examples for submerged hydrophytes are Hydrilla, Potamogeton and Utricularia. Okay. So examples for submerged means they are present the plants which are growing in under the water. Okay, present inside the water. So they are called as the submerged hydrophytes. So examples for submerged hydrophytes are Hydrilla, Potamogeton and Utricularia. So this is also important point. So next one is the floating hydrophytes. So first here three types of hydrophytes based on the how they are living in the water. So they are classified into three. That is submerged means present inside. Second one is the floating hydrophytes. So next one is the amphibious hydrophytes. So three types: submerged, floating and third one is amphibious hydrophytes. So submerged hydrophytes mean the plants which are growing inside the water. So example for submerged is Hydrilla, Potamogeton and Utricularia. Whereas the floating hydrophytes, second one is the floating hydrophytes. So again here the floating hydrophytes, they are classified into two types. So free floating hydrophytes and free floating but rooted hydrophytes. So here the floating hydrophytes again classified into free floating and floating but rooted. So free floating hydrophytes means freely float on the water surface and not rooted. So here roots are roots are absent here, free floating hydrophytes. So example for these are Eichhornia and Pistia. Here reduced, roots are reduced here in free floating. So they can float freely without roots. So that is, roots are not present inside soil. So but here in floating but rooted hydrophytes, the plants are rooted in the soil, but leaves are floating on the surface of the water. So example for floating but rooted hydrophytes is Nymphia and Marsilia. Okay, so examples for free floating hydrophytes is Eichhornia and Pistia. So next one is the amphibious hydrophytes. So amphibious means these are growing in shallow water or in muddy soil. So here both soil and water, both are present, amphibious. So that is in marshy places. So example for this is Cyperus and Typha. So these are the amphibious hydrophytes. That is the hydrophytes, they are growing in the marshy places. So here the water and muddy soil is present in that area. So these plants are growing. So here hydrophytes, first plants are classified into three types. That plants are classified into three types by the warming, and that is based on the availability of water. So first one is the hydrophytes, xerophytes and mesophytes. So hydrophytes mean the plants which are growing inside the water or near the water bodies. That is, here the more amount of water is available. Whereas xeric means that is, there is low amount of water, or in the absence of water, the plants which are growing in low amount of water. Next one is a mesic, means moderate water is required. So again in hydrophytes, here they are classified into three types. First one is the submerged, second one is floating, and third one is amphibious. So submerged means they are present inside. So example for submerged is Hydrilla, Potamogeton and Utricularia. Floating hydrophytes, again here the floating hydrophytes, they are so if the floating hydrophytes with roots are present, they are called as a floating with rooted. But here free floating hydrophytes means here the roots are reduced, are not rooted in the soil. So example for free floating is Eichhornia and Pistia. So floating but rooted means rooted examples are Nymphia and Marsilia. Amphibious means here the moderate, that is here shallow water and muddy soil is present, that is in marshy places. So all these hydrophytes have certain morphological, anatomical and physiological modifications while growing in above aquatic conditions. So these modifications are known as the hydrophytic adaptations. So like that is ecological adaptations of hydrophytes. So what are the adaptations which are taken place in these hydrophytes? So first morphological adaptations. So next one is anatomical adaptations and physiological adaptations. So first one is a morphological adaptations of hydrophytes. So that is, so when we describe the plant, so first from root to fruit. Okay, so first roots. So generally root system of the hydrophytes is not much of importance because they grow partially or completely in water. So here in hydrophytes, the root system is not well developed. So the main function of the roots are, that is, it helps in the attachment and also the absorption of water and nutrients from the soil. But here these plants are growing in the water. So here the root system is not well developed, that is roots are poorly developed. Example Hydrilla, Vallisneria. So root system is poorly developed in Hydrilla and Vallisneria and reduced or completely absent in Utricularia and Keratophyllum. So however, some hydrophytes have well developed adventitious roots. So even though, so generally root system is poorly developed in hydrophytes, but here well developed adventitious roots are seen in Eichhornia and Pistia. So here the root caps usually absent and root hairs are poorly developed in most of the hydrophytes. So root tips are often provided with the root pockets. So here the another one is, that is root pockets, which mainly protects the roots. Root pockets are seen in Eichhornia. So next one is the stem. So stem in submerged hydrophytes, the stem is long, slender, thin, spongy and flexible. Ela untundi stem. So these are the here. So this one. So in hydrilla, so here the stem. So stem is long, slender, and thin, and spongy and flexible. They can move easily. Even though if the water current, so they cannot break down due to this flexibility. So example for this is hydrilla. So in free floating hydrophytes, the stem or stolon is horizontal, spongy, thick, short, and floating on the surface of water. So example for this is Eichhornia, Azolla, and Pistia. So in this, that is in free floating hydrophyte, stem is horizontal, spongy, and thick, and short. While in rooted hydrophytes like Nymphaea, Nelumbium, and Cyperus, the stem is rhizome. Rhizome means underground. Okay, so these rhizomes live for many years and produce leaves every year. And mucilaginous or waxy coating is present on the entire plant body. So generally in hydrophytes, the mucilaginous layer or waxy coating is present. So because these plants, they are growing in the water. So generally what happens when we place any material, plants in water for more than 2 to 3 days, what happens here? The spoilage of the leaves will take place. But here, these plants, they are growing in growing inside the water for many years, many days, so they cannot spoil because due to presence of these mucilaginous or waxy coating. So next one, morphological adaptation. So next one is the petioles. So petiole means stalk of the flower. Okay. So some floating hydrophytes show special features in the petioles. So in free floating but rooted hydrophytes like Nymphaea and Nelumbium, so petioles are long, slender, and spongy. Here, so this is called as the petiole, that is stalk of the leaf, flower. Okay, stalk of the flower. So in free floating, that is mainly the petioles are long and slender and spongy in Nymphaea and Nelumbium, and while they are small and spongy in free floating hydrophytes like Eichhornia, and helps in the floating. So leaves, next one is the leaves. So here the leaves are thin, long, or ribbon-like, and so here the leaves are thin and ribbon-like leaves are seen in Vallisneria, and linear leaves are seen in Potamogeton, and finally dissected leaves in Keratophyllum. So leaves, the shape of the leaves also varies in different hydrophytes. So here expanded leaves, they are seen in this Nelumbium and Nymphaea, and they may be reduced in some. So here different shapes, leaves, dissected or ribbon shaped or long. So here reduced. Sometimes the leaves may be reduced and scale-like. So linear in Potamogeton and in ribbon shaped in Vallisneria and dissected in Keratophyllum. So the leaves may be long, flat, or entire as in Nelumbo and Nymphaea, and petioles are long, swollen, and spongy. Example, Eichhornia and Trappa. So heterophyly is also observed in some plants. So that is the leaves are reduced in thickness and covered by waxy coating. So heterophyly means that is presence of two types of leaves. So the leaves which are aerial, the shape of the leaf may be varies. The leaves which are present and the floating leaves may be different, and aerial leaves may be different. That is called as the heterophyly, presence of two types of leaves. Okay, so the aerial leaves are small in size, whereas the floating leaves are larger in size, like that. So here the variation, the size or shape may be present in these hydrophytes. Heterophyly is observed in leaves. Heterophyly means occurrence of two types of leaves. So next one is root. So that is, these are the morphological adaptations of hydrophytes. So next one is anatomical adaptations of hydrophytes. So internal structure. So internal adaptations, generally cuticle is very thin or absent in hydrophytes, and root hairs present in amphibious hydrophytes. So root hairs generally in submerged and floating hydrophytes, the root hairs are absent, but they are present in amphibious hydrophytes. So epidermis is single layered and made up of thin walled cells. and parenchymatous cortex. Cortex is also here parenchymatous, that is aerenchyma. So generally in hydrophytes, the main adaptation is that is presence of air chambers or aerenchyma. So parenchyma with air, they are called as the aerenchyma, which stores air gases. So it is called as the aerenchyma, is well developed and it has numerous air chambers. So which helps in the buoyancy, that is balance in the water, and also helps in the gases exchange. So conducting tissue, that is xylem and phloem, developed poorly and less differentiated. So only xylem tracheids are present in submerged forms, while the phloem is well differentiated in the amphibious hydrophytes. That is, here the conducting tissue, that is xylem and phloem, is also poorly developed, because generally the main function of these xylem and phloem is that is conduction of water and nutrients, because these plants are present in water, so they can absorb throughout the plant body, they can absorb the water and nutrients. So here there is no necessary for this conducting tissue. So here poorly developed, and mechanical tissues are generally absent, and here the pith is also absent. Next, leaves. So here the cuticle is absent or poorly developed in nymphia leaves, and epidermis is single layered with thin walled parenchymatous cells, and chlorophyll found in all the tissues. So here generally in mesophytic plants, so generally leaves mainly helps in the photosynthesis, but here and more amount of chlorophyll is present on the leaves, but here chlorophyll is found in all the tissues. Generally in the epidermis, chlorophyll is not present, but only in the cortex only chlorophyll is present, but here the chlorophyll is present in all the tissues. And epidermal cells of the leaves also contain abundant chloroplast, and they can function as the photosynthetic tissue, especially where the leaves and stems are very thin. Example in hydrilla. Example for this is hydrilla. So generally epidermis contains chlorophyll in hydrophytes, xerophytes or mesophytes, means here hydrophytes. Okay. So next, stomata are totally absent in submerged plants, but in floating leaves, stomata are present on the upper surface. In amphibious plants, stomata may be scattered on aerial parts. So here the stomata also reduced, stomata may be present, or it may be present only on the upper surface. In submerged plants, so mesophyll tissues are not differentiated, while in other forms of hydrophytes, these are well differentiated into spongy, parenchyma and polysaid tissue. So they show air cavities. In submerged leaves, air chambers are filled with respiratory and other gases. So mucilaginous canals and mucilage cells are present, so which secrete the mucilage to protect the plant body. So here main important point is that is presence of these mucilaginous canals. So these mucilaginous canals, they secrete the mucilage, so which mainly helps the plant. Even though they are present in the water, so due to presence of these mucilage, so they protect from the dissociation of these tissues. So mechanical tissues are poorly developed or completely absent. Next, stem anatomy. So stem here also cuticle is thin. So in all anatomical features, so cuticle in hydrophytes, the cuticle is poorly developed in leaves, stem, and also in the roots. So epidermis is single layered with thin-walled parenchymatous cells, and rhizome of nymphia and stem of typha shows well-developed epidermis. So only in this nymphia and stem of typha which shows well-developed epidermis. So in floating forms, thin-walled parenchymatous or cholenchymatous hypodermis is present, and which is containing the chloroplast. So here epidermis, so here the epidermis is green in color due to presence of chlorophyll. So these are the air chambers. So in floating forms, thin-walled parenchymatous or cholenchymatous hypodermis is present, and which is contain the chloroplast. So parenchymatous cortex is well developed with number of air chambers. So which mainly helps in buoyancy, that is floating or balancing in the water, and also rapid gases exchange. So endodermis and pericycle is generally distinct. And here the vascular tissues, that is xylem and phloem, developed poorly and thin-walled except in amphibious hydrophyte. So mechanical tissues are poorly developed or absent. So generally in hydrophytes, mechanical tissues are poorly developed, root system is poorly developed, and here epidermis also single-layered and thin-walled. So next one is the physiological adaptations of hydrophytes. So osmotic concentration of the cell sap are low because they are present in water. So entire plant surface absorbs water and nutrients. So hydrophytes maintain active photosynthesis as the chloroplasts are distributed throughout the plant. And here the CO2 and oxygen, which is evolved during the respiration and photosynthesis, is stored in the air chambers for future use. And no transpiration from submerged plants. So these are the ecological adaptations of hydrophytes. So today we'll stop here only. So 1 minute.
Madam, thank you very much.
1 minute, sir. So just I want to discuss yesterday's topic, some questions.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the some of the questions from the previous years, some multiple choice questions.